Welcome to another edition of learning more about Northern Italian regional languages and cultures. Today we're joined by Serena from the Maira Valley in the province of Cuneo in Piemonte, specifically the town San Damiano Macra. Serena, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Kyle. Hi, everyone. I'm Serena. I come from San Damiano Macra, as Kyle said before. It is a little village in Piedmont near Cuneo, and it is the place in which I was born, in which I live. I have lived for the first 15 years of my life. And then during the winter, I moved to Cuneo to study and to start, for example, university, and to be able to move between Cuneo and Torino in a more comfortable way. I uh, I have studied languages during my bachelor's degree, and then now I continue studying social linguistics and dialectology, and I am attending the courses at the University of Torino, and so I'm going to obtain my master's degree. I hope soon.
That sounds really amazing, and congratulations for going for your master's degree.
Thank
I
you.
knew after get my bachelor's degree, I just had to stop. Probably just due to my inability to actually concentrate very well. I'm joking. But from the Maira Valley, and perhaps for the audience who don't know too much about Piemonte, the province of Cuneo is one of the largest provinces in Italy by size. I believe the only provinces which are larger, if I'm correct, by all means, guys, if I'm wrong, write a comment. But I believe there's two provinces in Sardinia which are larger, and a province of Foggia in Puglia, which is larger by geographical size. So in Cuneo, in particular in your area, do people speak Piemontese or do they speak any other languages? I've heard they speak Occitano. Can you describe the linguistic situation in Val Maira, please? Serena.
Okay. In Piedmont, it is common to speak Piedmontese, for example, in the area of Langhe, that is in the southeast of Piedmont. In our valleys, for example, my valley, Valle Maira, Valle Varaita, and Stura, that are I can say the largest and the longest ones. For example, we speak Occitano. That is, it is not a dialect from Italian that comes from linguistically. It is not correct that the dialect comes from Italian, but our Italian language comes from one prominent dialect that was the one of Florence. But it is a minority language, and so it is not an Italic an Italic language or a Gallo-Italic language like Piedmontese. It is a language that comes from France because we share the border, the southwest border of Piedmont with France, and so we also shared some particular features of language. And so, for example, Occitan is a language that comes from the south of France. I don't speak Occitano in my everyday life, if I have to admit, because I have learned it from my family, because my grandparents and my father speak it, and so I am a passive speaker, as I don't know if in English the term is similar to to the one that I said, but so I understand Occitano well, but in more practically, I when it comes to speak it, I encounter some difficulties. So I can try to to speak it now.
No,
But
please, it'd be a pleasure to hear Occitano. Please just introduce yourself as much as you can in Occitano, please.
Ok, buongiorno a tutti, mi siu Serena, mi venu dalla Val Maira, siu interessata alla lingua, alla cultura occitana e alla lingua in generale. Mon paire e mon nonu parlun ben, me piasario deco a mi poter parlar kuma lur. I think I think we can finish like this. I'm sorry because the switch between Occitano, between languages in general, but it is very it is very hard. But I'm very interested in languages, and so I have to master it. And so it is my goal for the future, because I would like to broadcast, to transmit it to my family if I will have one, maybe in the future, and also because this language is I think is already dying,
Okay.
but in reality, in my valley, I can say it is not the case. For example, this summer I went on a trip to Marsiglia, to Marseille,
Yeah.
and it was one of my goal to try to find some traces of Occitan, for example, in the toponymy or in the streets, or for example in graffiti or something else. And I have found some of them, but there were the situation. It is not like here. Here is better,
Okay.
also because of the government in France is different from Italy. Italy in the past years have made a lot of legislation towards the minority languages and so on. And so, for example, there is a here in my valley, or in the in the Occitan valleys in general, in the past 2 decades, or 3 decades, we can say, there has been a true revival that started, for example, also from music. There is a famous band from here, from the Valle Grana, that is Lou Dalfin. I don't know if you, Kyle, know it, but it is one of the first and you can say the most important band that make Occitan music with also the lyrics in this language, and so it leads many people to realize the heritage language that they have. And so, for example, it so happened for in my case, for example, so I started to know better my area, my language, from art, and so from music, poetry, and so on. And then I improved my studies, for example, studying languages and minority languages, etc.
That's a great answer. And just as a little aside for those listening to the video, when Serena made the comparison between Marseille and Italy, France is a country with a lot of linguistic diversity from a historical standpoint. And of course,
Yes.
this is a generalization, but the French governments for many generations, even many centuries, have always been unwilling to recognize minority languages. A great example would be the island of Corsica, which has got historical ties to Tuscany and Sardinia from a historical standpoint. And obviously, the language is very similar to Tuscan to a certain extent, standard Italian. But the French government have consistently refused to acknowledge it. And as you were saying, when you were in Marseille, you were looking to find traces of the Occitan language, and you found very little, which is very sad. But I think it's great that you mentioned a band. And to answer the question, I've not heard about that band, but the first thing we're going to do after this discussion is check them out. Because I think the best way you can promote a language, you can promote any culture, is to have art in that language. I think young people, as much
Yes.
as they enjoy reading, young people, especially now, they like music, they like television, and that's the best way you can appeal to the younger generations. Have entertainment in that language, have music in that language, have memes in that language, you know. In Val Maira, you said obviously the language, the Occitan language is sadly declining, but it's not as bad as Marseille. For example, how many people, do a lot of people your age still speak it, or is it more popular to speak it if you're older, or is Piedmontese becoming more common in your area? How would you assess the situation?
I would say that Piedmontese is a language that is spoken when you arrive, for example, in more larger cities or towns. For
Hmm.
example, in my case, in Valle Maira, if you come to Dronero,
Hmm.
it is common for you to listen to people speaking Piedmontese.
Hmm.
But also for immigrations situations from abroad or from other areas, other Italian areas, for example, from the south. It is common also not to hear Piedmontese in the streets. So you can hear it. But on the other side, you also cannot. And for example, here in Valle Maira, we can say in the higher part of the valley, almost on the border with France, you can also hear young people speaking Occitan. But for example, here in my village, you can hear for the most so elderly people that speak it that comes, for example, from other villages near San Damiano,
Hmm.
and so they arrive here and, for example, do the shopping, and so it is common to hear Occitan. I have read books about this situation, and some researchers say that here a cultural and linguistic miracle is happening in Italy. There are obviously movements, cultural movements, music, group of dancers that dance, for example, at town parties. But it is not like here. It comes from what I said before. So music and the arts are bringing a great revival in here, and so I can also find it out when I go to a party or a traditional feast or for example parties in which you can dance
Yeah.
the Occitan dances, and there are a lot of young people that maybe doesn't know exactly what Occitania is, or but maybe they come here just to enjoy the party and the dances, and then from one thing they can maybe apply to a course of Occitan language. I think it is great because I'm also here to speak with you, but I come from that background, we can say, from that realization that comes from music and arts, and then it leads to improvement in other aspects of this culture.
It's fantastic to hear you speak about your language and your local valley in such a positive way. I mean, just as a little comment for those listening, if you go back 100 years, almost everyone in Piemonte spoke either Piemontese or Occitano. it's only the last 100 years that so many of the young people and even middle-aged people have lost touch with their languages, which I will discuss in more depth in a later video. But just this brings me to my next question. If I were to ask you, what does the Occitan language mean to you? Are you proud of the Occitan language? Are you proud to have grown up in a family where it meant something to you? Does it mean a lot to you? How would you respond to that question?
I would say that I'm proud of my culture, and I dedicated my bachelor thesis to that. Also during the COVID period and so on, it was the first thing that when I woke up in the morning, I could think and say, "Oh, I can do something for my culture. I am doing what I like." I'm very proud of it, even if, for example, I don't speak Occitan in my everyday life, or I can say only a few sentences. But it's a culture that set us apart from France on one side and
Mhm.
Piedmont on the other side. And so it is a completely different way of thinking, of living, also because we are in the mountains. And so Piedmontese is more linked to hills or to Torino, so plain environment. It is a way of living and a way of partying, a way of behaving that is different also from France. And so I'm very interested in it, and I will continue improving my knowledge about this culture, and if it's possible also to do something for this culture, that I can say I did it something on my own that can be useful for the future of or for the present, for people that come visiting us, or simply enjoying our parties, our dances, and so on.
Oh, that's an amazing answer. Really interesting to hear that. And you've mentioned a few times these parties and these dances. Are traditions a big part of life in Val Maira? Are there any traditions you participate in?
In our valley, this tradition is lost because we haven't particular dances, as for example Valle Varaita or Valle Vermenagna, because the other dances, type of dances, comes from the south of France. But in general, during the summer, but also in the other seasons, it is traditional here to simply to organize balls, and it is maybe the most entertaining activity. But for example, in my valley, there is an ancient tradition of people who sold anchovies. For example, in Macra, but also here in San Damiano, in Macra, there is also a museum about this job, and it was a real job. People came in from here, walked, hiked in the mountains, and arrived, for example, in Liguria or in the south of France. They sold wares, and they changed these wares with salt and anchovies. So fish wasn't it wasn't a habit to eat fish here in the valleys. And also, this thing, it is also true for meat in general. So historically in the valleys, meat or fish weren't eaten every day, for only in the feast or in the important occasions. It is particular because in that way, fish, for example, anchovies, was the most common to find. Could be sold also here in Piedmont, so in the markets, also near Turin. I knew some elderly people who did that job, and also here, for example, in the markets in the valleys. And most of the people that sold anchovies came from Valle Maira. They are called Ianchuie, and so there is a museum about that. And if in the future you would come here, I think it is a good place to visit, to have a look.
I can't wait to visit Val Maira eventually. It sounds like such an amazing place with such a rich history. Just bringing this really interesting kind of interview toward a closure. Lastly, if you are involved in any projects, would you like to discuss those projects right now?
Yes, I can briefly describe my current project. I'm working for my master's thesis, and I'm collecting all the toponym. I'm trying, we can say, to collect the toponymy of San Damiano Macra. It is a larger work that I would think, but I'm very satisfied about that, and I think I hope this work can be useful for people who will visit Valle Maira, and also to remember these places that now maybe didn't exist anymore.